The Houston Texans suffer a major setback to their defense with the loss of defensive back Jaylen Pitre.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm your credential media member, Brian Big Sarge Bearfield, your Texans insider. I want to give a shout out to all our Battle Red Nation, all our everydayers. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer on the show, which is part of the Locked On Network. Your team every day. All right. On the show today, we're going to talk about the breaking news of defensive back Jaylen Pitre opting to have surgery and out for the rest of the year and how that's going to affect the Houston Texans defense. We'll also talk about how getting pressure on Tua Tagovailoa will be a vital part for the Houston Texans defense if they want to win this game. It's going to be very vital that they put the pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. And Christian Harris is back on the practice field. I love seeing Christian Harris back. He was one of those guys that's a very good locker room guy, but just seeing him back, seeing that number 48 on the field is great. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, Locked On NFL, and use code, all lowercase, Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. What's going on, y'all? Yeah, it's been one of those. Why can't I get this thing to work? It's been one of those type of days, y'all. It's been one of those type of days where we get some good news for the Texans with Christian Harris being back, and then we get the breaking news. Jaylen Pitre, as first reported by Aaron Wilson from KPRC2 Houston, will undergo surgery on his partial tear of his pectoral. He was hurt 3 weeks ago against the Tennessee Titans. And before the bye week, we didn't know if he was going to be able to play or not. We didn't know if he was going to be we didn't know if Jaylen Pitre was going to try to put a brace on his shoulder and come back and play to the remainder of the season, and it just gutted out through the playoffs. But evidently it was worse than what we thought. Now, I got word a couple of weeks ago after the injury that surgery could be a possibility, but I wasn't sure. Jaylen Pitre is one of those people, and when you get a chance to speak with him, he's one of those people that football is something that he loves to play. And for him to opt to have season-ending surgery, he has to – I'm pretty sure that he's had 3 doctors tell him, you can't play anymore. If you play, you're not going to – like the rest of your career is going to be bad. We can't put a brace on this. You have to have surgery. And a lot of times when we hear about these injuries in the NFL, when we hear about these partially torn muscles, especially in the pectoral area, it takes a while for it to heal. And then, of course, you got to go through the rehab surgery, but it takes a while to heal. I remember when J.J. Watt had to have that surgery. He got hurt during it was funny because he got hurt during a drive. And at first, he didn't know what was going on. At first, J.J. Watt said he didn't know what was going on. He just knew that he could not really move his arm. And when you look at the game against the Tennessee Titans, you can see that Jaylen Pitre was going to make a tackle on Tyler Boyd, and then he got hit by Henry To'oTo'o, and that whole collision is what took him out. And so now, with no Jaylen Pitre, the Houston Texans are going to have to depend on players like Miles Bryant, who I feel like should get more playing time with the rest of the regular season and in the playoffs, because that is a position that he has played. That nickel corner position is a position that he has played, but also veteran safety Jimmy Ward has played that position as well. So I think that they're going to alternate between those two. You may even see Jeff Okudah playing a little bit of that spot as well. They're going to need all the help that they can get, especially with the 4 games that they have coming up to end the season against Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Tennessee. Jaylen Pitre not only was a vital part, not only an intricate part of that defense for just his presence. He was very good in run support. He was very good in coming up to the line, being that additional linebacker for the Houston Texans defense. But he also had a knack to be able to get to the ball or create a turnover, either a turnover for himself or for others. And you're just going to miss that experience that he brought. And especially you've seen him thrive this season in that, I want to call it a new old position for him, like a new old position, because he was back to playing the position that he played in college a lot in college, and we know that his last year at Baylor, he was a defensive Big 12 defensive player of the year. And so when they decided to make that switch for him, coming into OTAs and coming into training camp, it was one at first. When we were out there at training camp, it was one of those things where I'm like, wait a minute, this something looks different. Something looks different, especially in a spot that we were used to seeing Desmond King in, former Houston Texan cornerback, nickel cornerback. And so once we seen Jaylen Pitre there, I was like, okay. And then I had an opportunity to speak with Jaylen Pitre after training camp practice, and he said, this is a position that I'm very comfortable with. He said, I went all the way back to high school to relearn how to play this position because I had been playing the safety position for 2 years in the NFL. And we seen what the kind of impact that Jaylen Pitre had in his rookie season with the amount of tackles that he had. I think he had 5 interceptions as well. We seen the kind of impact that he had in his rookie year. And then the second year, some of the numbers went down. We seen some missteps from Jaylen Pitre only because he was in a new system, under a new defensive coordinator, under a whole new regime with new players. And he looked out of place a lot of times, but it seemed like he was able to get himself together. And he was still the Jaylen Pitre that we knew from his rookie season, but there was just something missing. And I'm so glad that the Houston Texans hired a coach like DeMeco Ryans, a former defensive player, but also a former defensive coordinator who's able to see these type of things. He's able to read and to recognize something ain't right, something's going on. And he put Jaylen Pitre in a position to be successful this season. And that's all that he was this season. It was like I don't want to say the light came on for him, but he just looked so natural and so comfortable being back there. And so he's going to be missed. Now, he will still be around the locker room, but Jaylen Pitre is also a very good locker room guy. He sat not too far. Well, actually, he sat next to left tackle Laramie Tunsil, who also sits next to C.J. Stroud, who also sits next to Joe Mixon, who also sits next to Stephon Diggs, who also sits next to Tank Dell. I like to call it Hollywood Row. It's Hollywood Row, starting with Jaylen Pitre on down. But the way that locker room is constructed and the way that they're all sitting next to each other, they're all leaders. They all talk to each other. And not to say that they don't talk to everybody else in the locker room, but it's just that right there in that area is a whole bunch of knowledge and a whole bunch of football and a whole bunch of leadership. There's a whole bunch of leadership going on. And when Jaylen Pitre is on the field, I think that's one thing that they're going to miss. But hey, they got to step up. Somebody else is going to have to step up, and I think that it's going to be Jimmy Ward. I think that we'll see Jimmy Ward being able to step up now that he knows that that's probably going to be his primary position for the rest of the regular season and throughout the playoffs. And Miles Bryant, who, like I said, I got an opportunity to speak with before the bye week, asking him about playing that position. He said, Sarge, this is a position that I was born to play. He said, you have to have a special type of mindset to play this position. And he said, and I love it. He said, I'm so close to the action and I'm so close to everything that's going on, so I can, be a help in the run support, but I can also play any receiver that's in this slot position. And so that's the type of guy that you want on your team, that type of guy who has that type of mindset, that type of guy who is willing to go out and do any and everything that he can. And speaking of doing anything and everything that they can, I almost kind of feel sorry for Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, because if he looks to his left and if he looks to his right, it's going to be danger coming from both sides. We'll talk about that after the break. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Texans fans, listen up. The big showdown with the Texans versus the Dolphins is just around the corner, and you don't want to miss it. If you're still looking for tickets, forget the hassle. Download the Game Time app now and grab your seats in just seconds. With Game Time, you'll get last-minute deals and even see your seat view before you buy. No hidden fees, no surprises. Just the best prices delivered right to your phone. So don't wait. Secure your spot and feel the energy at NRG Stadium. Head to your app store, download Game Time, and be a part of the action when the Texans take on the Dolphins. Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back, Battle Red Nation, to the Locked On Texans podcast. So, Tua Tagovailoa, right? Quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. He's a special breed. He's very special. And I'm not just talking about a guy who has the leadership skills of one of those players that you want to go to battle with. I'm not just talking about his leadership skills and his mindset. I'm not just talking about his toughness. And we know the history behind Tagovailoa. We know the history behind Tua and his concussions, and a lot of those concussions has come from him just being tough. Just his toughness on the field. Just his toughness and him trying to do any and everything that he can. We know that he's one of those guys that always wants to be on the field to help his teammates, and he's done an excellent job. He's done a great job, especially in the last couple of weeks that he's been back and the way that he's been playing. Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans said that he's one of those guys where you look at him and you see how much he's grown. You see how comfortable he is in that offense. You can tell that he is one of those guys that you have to get to him quick because his release, he has one of the fastest releases in the NFL. Just last week when they had the overtime win against the New York Jets, in 2.5 seconds or less, he was 24 for 33 for 257 yards, 72.7% completion rate, and 1 touchdown. When he had 2.51 seconds or more, he was 9 of 13 for 74 yards, 69.2% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, dropped back 48 times, 0 sacks. And so we see that even under pressure, he thrives. 257 yards with 2.5 seconds or less, 24 for 33. He's one of those guys that thrives under pressure. And one of the things that he's been able to do so good this season is he learned how to take what the defense is giving him. He's taken exactly what the defense is giving him. In the past, he always wanted to go for the chunk yards. He always wanted to go for the explosive plays. He always wanted to get the ball downfield to, I've said this on numerous occasions, that track team that he has at wide receiver in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So being able to get the ball out of his hands, to get the ball downfield was something that he always wanted to do. But this season, you can tell he's made a concerted effort in order to be able to look at the field to see what the defense is giving him and living to fight another day. I know when we talked with Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald, I talked about they really want to score in 3 to 5 plays. They really want to, but they don't mind long drives. They have had multiple long series this season from Tua Tagovailoa and the rest of that offense. And so the one thing that I feel that the Houston Texans have to do, they have to be able to get pressure on him and get pressure on him quick. We see how great he was against the New York Jets. But the Houston Texans is a whole different animal. The Houston Texans defensive ends, they're totally different than anything that Tua has went up against. When you have one defensive end in Danielle Hunter, who has 81 pressures this season, which is 11 more than any other pass rusher in 2024, tied for 4th in the league for 10.5 sacks. And then you have Will Anderson Jr., who has 9.5 sacks. He's tied for 7th. Would have been more if he hadn't had to go on injured reserve with an ankle injury. When you have the best tandem, the best duo who leads the NFL with 20 combined sacks, number 1 in the league, it's not an easy task. That's not an easy task for your tackles who have to play against them. And when you get that type of pressure on them, and we've talked about this, the interior offense, the interior defensive lineman who led by Tim Settle Jr., who told me on Wednesday that I said, Tim, if you had to vote for one player from your team to make it to the Pro Bowl, who would it be? He said, me. He said, I'm the best defensive tackle in this league. And that's what you have to have, that type of mindset. And I would love to say that he said that and laughed and chuckled. He did not. Said it with a straight face, looked me directly in my eyes and said, I'm the best defensive tackle in this league. And that's the type of confidence that he has. And that starts from DeMeco Ryans on down. And so when you have that, defensive tackle Foley Fatukasi, who has been out for a while on injured reserve, he's returned. He was back at practice on Wednesday. And so with him and Tim Settle Jr., then you still have Danico Autry, who can play inside and outside. I'm just saying that it's going to benefit the Houston Texans defense to be able to get the pressure on Tua and get the pressure on him early to help on the back end. Because on Wednesday, once again, DeMeco talked about you can't get caught up looking at the eye candy. And what he mean by the eye candy is all the pre-snap motion and everything that they're trying to do to take your eyes off of what they really want to do, the play that they're really trying to run. And all that starts with Tua Tagovailoa. All that starts with him. And if you give him time to get rhythm, you give him time to get the ball out of his hands quickly. He gets into that rhythm, and now he's moving that offense up the field, and they like to go quick too. So hey, they'll tempo. If they see that Tua's in a groove, they will get into Mike McDaniels will get into that groove, and he go. Let's go, because he knows the weapons that he has. And so in order to slow down Tua, in order to stop Tua, in order to be able to win this game, one of my keys to victory for the Houston Texans, they're going to have to pressure him. Not traditionally. You can't do it traditionally. And if you look at the way that the Houston Texans defensive ends play, they play the wide nine. And by playing the wide nine means that the defensive ends are on the outside shoulders of the tackles, which means that 9 times out of 10, when they're rushing up the field, it's always going to be a one-on-one. And if you're coming over to help either way, which I'm thinking that because Tua is left-handed, they're going to have to slide the protection over most likely on Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson. They switch up a lot, but Danielle likes to play that side a lot. And that's the open side for Tua. And what I mean by open is when he opens up to throw the ball, if they're going to have to slide the protection that way. And when you do, you're still leaving this one-on-one with Will. And when you do, you're still leaving one-on-one with whatever defensive tackles is in the game. And when that happens, the Houston Texans are one of the most dangerous defenses in the league. There aren't too many times that you've looked at the games and said, oh, the defense lost the game. Not too many times you see that. And so the way that DeMeco Ryans and the way the defensive coordinator Matt Burke has these guys ready to play day in and day out, and you can tell if you look at some of these early, Pro Bowl ballots, you'll see Derek Stingley Jr. at the cornerback position on the Pro Bowl ballot. You'll see Will and you'll see Daniil on the Pro Bowl ballot. I think Azeez is even on there, and I doubt that he makes it now due to the fact that he's suspended for the next 3 games and, a lot of the bad publicity that he's getting. But that's one heck of a defense that the Houston Texans have, and I think that stopping the key to stopping the Miami Dolphins is to get the pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. And what better way to do it than, a guy who's watched Tua, a guy who knows Tua, a guy who, screams out Roll Tide Road as well. And Christian Harris, what a sight to see with him being back on the practice field on Wednesday. Today's episode is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and is completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Start earning points on the rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com, Locked On NFL. That's joinbilt.com/Locked On NFL. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. Now, for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Welcome back, Battle Red Nation. There was a Christian Harris sighting. Now, I know. You're like, well, Sarge, why are you talking to us in such a soft tone? Because I just want to make sure that you can understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. There was a Christian Harris sighting. The first time we've seen Christian Harris since when? I think the last time Christian Harris played was January of 2024 in the divisional round against the Baltimore Ravens. That's the last time Christian Harris has played in a football game. Then we got a chance to watch him work out during his offseason. There was a lot of videos out there, a lot of excitement. And then I've seen him in OTAs. Then he got hurt, and then he tried to come back in training camp, and then he got hurt. And then the only time I was able to see Christian Harris was when he was rehabbing. But on Wednesday, standing out there on the practice field, and you could just notice him. You're looking at the person, you're looking around the field, and you notice that there's just one person that's just bouncing around. And I was like, oh, he is so happy to be here. It's almost like when you get that Christmas present that you wanted, like you come downstairs and under right by the tree is that bicycle that you've always wanted. You've been eyeing, and Santa Claus brought it for you. I feel like that's what General Manager Nick Caserio and Houston Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans felt like when they seen number 48 out on the field on Wednesday, just bouncing around, moving, going through all the drills. And the testament is to the way that Christian Harris worked and the way that he put in the work and the way that he worked to get himself back into game shape, get himself back on the field. There was no possible way, and I'm telling you something that you might not have known. There's no possible way that Christian Harris wasn't going to try his best to play in at least one or two games to help his team. It was the worst thing that could have happened to him, having to watch the games from the sideline. He is a competitor. He's a fierce competitor. He's a leader. He is also one of the best linebackers on the Houston Texans. He's one of the best linebackers on the Houston Texans roster. And given the opportunity and given the chance, I cannot wait to see him and Azeez Al-Shaair line up together. There's only one other duo that I think that in the AFC South that may be better than Azeez and Christian Harris, and that's only because they don't have the time together. But Indianapolis Colts linebackers EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, those two are a creme de la creme when it comes to linebackers in the AFC South. But I think that once Azeez and Christian Harris are actually able to play multiple games together, we probably won't see that until next season unless the Houston Texans make a very strong Super Bowl run. If they can make a Super Bowl run, you're probably going to see it. Barring injury or suspension, you probably will get a glimpse of what they're going to be in the future. But just having him back on the field, just him being out there was a welcoming sight. And Texas running back Joe Mixon, during his locker room interview, mentioned Christian Harris. And he mentioned Christian Harris after talking about Azeez and not having Azeez, but still having his back, of course, but not having Azeez. And he said, but it's okay because we're getting a dog back. We're getting a dog back in Christian Harris. He's coming back. He's one of those guys that can play at a high rate of speed. And so he was asked the question, well, you're new to the Texans this year. What do you know about Christian Harris in order to be able to call him, say that he's a dog on the field? He said, well, we played against the Texans last year, and this is when Joe Mixon was a part of the Cincinnati Bengals. He said, we played against them last year, and I remember I think he said he was running some type of route, and he got hit by Christian Harris. And he was like, man, who is number 48? He's like, who is number 48? Where did he come from? And how come he wasn't on the scouting report? And so Joe Mixon was like, ever since then, I've kept my eye on him in the way I kept my eye on him for the rest of the season. And so I was, excited to be able to be a part of the Houston Texans franchise the Houston Texans organization, because I knew that I was going to be playing with a dog in Christian Harris. And so everybody throughout that entire locker room, not just on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball, was very happy to see Christian Harris back on the field on Wednesday. And we don't know if he's actually going to play against the Miami Dolphins because he has not been activated yet. Kenyon Green has not been activated. They're just set to return, and so they were both on the practice field. But we don't know if Christian Harris is going to play. It may be the same situation like when they brought Nico Collins off of injured reserve and they made him sit out one more week before bringing him back. And so Christian Harris may sit out one more week just so the Houston Texans will know that he's ready to go. But if he's able to play, he's probably going to be on a snap count. And by him being on a snap count, he's going to take advantage of each and every snap he can get. let me let y'all in on another little secret before we leave the Locked On Texans podcast. I got a chance to show Christian Harris the video of what Joe Mixon said. And he looked at the video and he started laughing. And after the video went off, he was laughing. And Nico said, "Hey, man, what you laughing at?" He said, "Bro, I used to play with Joe Mixon on Madden." He said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, man, I used to play with Joe Mixon on Madden." Wow. That just means that Sarge is getting old as well. Sheesh. You've been tuned to the Locked On Texans podcast. Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter. And make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Texans podcast, available wherever you get your podcast from. And subscribe to the Locked On Texans YouTube page. Until next time, peace.